Have you ever been watching a deer all the way up to deer season and then have it disappear on you? Well, this video will explain to you what's happening and hopefully get you back on that deer so that you can make those adjustments and get that deer on the ground. Well, that deer is disappearing because his feeding cycles have changed and he's hitting a different food source. So what we're going to do is walk you through the different times of year and what the deer are feeding on and explain how the deer change around those patterns. So what you're seeing when you're scouting those deer all leading up to deer season is their summer feeding pattern. At this point in time, you got soybean fields, alfalfa fields, really any sort of green field, those deer are going to be hitting and feeding on hard depending on what area you're in. Now, whenever the beans start going yellow, that's when those deer shift. It's literally as soon as they go yellow, they shift. And what they shift to is, again, whatever's left that's green, so you're talking your micro food plots, your frigid forage pure trophy clover is what we use, anything that's green still, and then also your acorns. This is when they switch over, and if you can find a tree that has acorns, those deer are going to be there. So what we'll do is actually leading up to the season, get a feel for where some of the deer are and where some of the oaks are that are producing acorns. They prefer white oaks, so if you can find those, that's great, but really they'll eat any acorns, so if you can find red oaks, pin oaks, whatever, just find some oaks that have some acorns, chances are you're going to find deer. Now, something to keep in mind when you're hunting oak trees, if there's a big oak crop, it becomes very difficult to hunt deer because they can go pretty much wherever they want and find food, so it becomes very difficult to pattern. However, if you can find a stand of trees that has like only a couple oaks in it and they're producing and there aren't any other close, that's a place where you want to get some cameras in there, hang up a tree stand, and chances are there's going to be a bunch of deer going in there. So when you're trying to set up your property for optimal deer habitat, you want to keep this in mind and understand that those big fields of beans you're not going to compete with. But what you can do is set up micro food plots close to those, or if there's oaks close to those, you want to try to get as many food sources as possible for the different times of year in an area that you can, and that'll hold the deer year long. So what we've done is we've got a big bean field in one of our areas. It turns yellow. Well, we've got a food plot that's sitting right next to it, close enough to right next to it, that those deer just transition right over to, and a lot of times during summer they hit that food plot, then go out to the beans because it's a little more sheltered. So if you can get those food plots in an area where they feel more sheltered by putting corn up, which is another thing we do, we put corn up on the front of the property, now you've got a big bean field, you've got a micro food plot that's sitting there with clover or something like that in there, you've got corn shielding it, and then guess what? The next transition that those deer go to after they get done eating all those acorns is big cornfields and crop fields that they're cutting down later in the year. And so what we've basically done is hit all three of those times a year in those different feeding patterns in order to try to keep the deer in the same area for longer. Another thing to keep in mind is that if you're in an area where you don't have a lot of crop fields and you're in mostly a wooded area, once those acorns are gone, those deer are going to switch almost entirely to leafy browse. So maple trees, those types of things. You can find online the list of trees that they prefer. Maples is one of their most preferred trees. And they'll eat the leaves and the ends of the branches off of it. So that's something to keep in mind, where if you don't have all that stuff, that's where hinge cutting comes in. And we've got a video that you can watch on hinge cutting by clicking here. But we'll do that in some of the areas where we can't necessarily put a food plot in to get that extra cover, and then also provide some extra food for those deer when it's getting hard in the dead of the winter, because that's when they're going to start switching over to the hinge cuts, is when it gets really cold and it becomes hard to find food. This is an area where we brought it all together. We've got our early season green plot, which is frigid forage pure trophy clover. We've got corn for the late season, and we've got a fall plot that we just planted, which is frigid forage big and beastie, which is something that you plant late summer, early fall, and it grows fast, and it's a brassica mix with so turnips and radishes and things like that are in it, and it's just starting to come up. It's been planted for maybe a few weeks now, and when it frosts, it gets very palatable to the deer. So we've done this to try to bring in deer to this area all year long. I hope you like this video. I hope it's going to help you try to keep a better understanding for what's happening when you're watching deer and you're not sure where they've gone. And I hope it gets you guys some more deer on the ground. If you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and check out some of our other deer hunting how-tos and tips. Thanks for watching. So the main driver for deer changing their patterns is their feeding cycles. And we're going to start off going through